And we're live. It is Thursday, May 8th, the year of our Lord 2025, and I want to say a word about May 8th. I know what you're expecting me to say about May 8th, and I'm not going to mention that because saying that is boring. I will point out that in 1980, on May 8th, the World Health Organization confirmed the eradication of smallpox. In 2021, a car bomb exploded in front of a school in Kabul, killing at least 55 people and wounding 150. May 8th is the birthday of Niels Juel, the Norwegian Danish admiral, in 1697. It is also the birthday of Johann Jensen, the Danish mathematician and engineer. And closer to our times, it is the birthday of Phyllida Law, the Scottish actress, in 1932. And of course, there are wars that came to the end on May 8th. In 453 BCE, the House of Zhao defeated the House of Ji, ending the Battle of Xinjiang in the state of Jin. In 1450, the Kentish men revolts against Henry VI ended. You know, it's a big day. It is 8:02 a.m., which is 5:02 a.m. in Davis, California, or in the shack in the woods where Nick Weaver is camped out with his Legos. And I don't have a prepared monologue today. As you know, I never prepare a monologue, but sometimes I just monologue, but I want to talk about cryptocurrency, and there are two reasons why cryptocurrency is on my mind. The first is that yesterday I wrote my column about cryptocurrency scams by President Trump and how we can prevent them. And I do think there is a way to prevent them, but writing that column put cryptocurrencies on my mind. And the second reason is that Nick Weaver is our guest. And I had this recollection that one of the last times, not the last time, but one of the times I've talked to Nick Weaver on a Lawfare podcast was about why Bitcoin sucked and why it was going to become valued at zero. And that was when Bitcoin was, I don't know, probably a 20th the value that it currently is. And I fully agreed with Nick, and Bitcoin has not resolved to a value of zero. And so we have these questions on my mind. And whenever I have kind of technical questions with a policy lilt to them, whether it's about drones or about, cybersecurity, it's always good to have a conversation with Nick Weaver, who is a nerd's nerd, and admitted to me that he's in a one-step program for Lego addicts. Nick, what's the one step?
Admit you have a problem.
And then
it's the one-step program.
There you go. So have you admitted it?
Yep. I think this is an admission enough.
There we go. Nick has a problem. He has no intention of curing it, or he does not acknowledge a higher power except the Lego gods, which keep supplying more Legos. Nick, why has Bitcoin not resolved to zero value, and as it should, it being modern tulips with no inherent value, it being stupid and only useful for campaign manipulations, corruption, and other shenanigans? making people who should be shysters rich. Why is Bitcoin still with us?
Two things. First of all, never underestimate this. Nobody ever went broke underestimating the stupidity of American people.
Or
Um,
non-American people.
yes.
There's a lot of non-Americans who are investing a lot of money in Bitcoin.
And the other thing is fraud, 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 crime, 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 crime. And it starts with a big decision back in 2018 by the federal government to basically not prosecute financial crimes until after the collapse. That overall, the SEC and everybody else is reactive. And the SEC basically refused, except in one or two cases, to ever proactively go up against the blatant security law violations that were going on. But there was a more critical decision done in 2018. So in 2018, I flagged and a few others flagged, and you can actually go back in Lawfare and read it, that Tether was going to be a problem. So Tether was this stable coin.
So wait, before we go any further, are other people hearing a scratch on Nick's voice? Yeah, others are. I can't tell if that's your mic or if it's something else, but your voice is coming through with a heavy record scratch on top of it.
Huh. Let me try turning off, turning on type thing.
You might also just try your computer's native mic.
Yeah. How do you change the mic
Oh,
on?
maybe you can't. Um,
No, I can't. I have to disconnect and reconnect.
Actually, it just went away.
Huh.
Um, all right, let's keep going and see what happens.
Okay. So Tether is this stable coin. The idea being you send them $1, they give you a crypto token. That crypto token can be used as a dollar, and theoretically you can go to them and get your dollar back. The problem is this is literally Liberty Reserve, a a scheme that was taken out by the feds for violating money laundering laws. The only difference is Tether, rather than having a central database, has it pseudonymous on the blockchain. And this, back when it was $2 billion, was the driver of Bitcoin prices. So their model was they would loan Tether to big, shadowy institutional investors
And by
in
institutional investors, we mean like gangs and war criminals and um
more like just the crypto insiders.
I see. So it's not like MS-13, it's like uh the the Chinese affiliate of MS-13 that does Bitcoin mining.
Or like some of the folks behind FTX and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, they'd buy Bitcoin, drive up the price, and the Tether is now backed by the loans that were used to buy Bitcoin. This is just rocket fuel for the price. Um, Tether, when it was $2 to $4 billion, stunk to high heaven. That it was just so clearly illegal. Yet the feds did nothing about it. And Tether has grown and grown and grown since, and now it's some purported $200 billion. And in order to go that big, you have to assume that there's $200 billion of serious institutional investor money in the cryptocurrency space that did not want to go to Coinbase or one of the other lightly regulated exchanges that are only mildly crooked, and instead deal with overseas scams like Binance and OKX and everybody else, where the market manipulation is off the hook, or you assume they are printing money. And this was bad enough when it was just in the cryptocurrency business, but because Tether is accepted at par as dollars in so many of those shady places, it's become the de facto money for sanctions evasion.
All right, the
And
scratch is back now. So let's assume you have a loose connection or something.
oh, I will ditch my microphone and rejoin. So,
Okay. Um, in the meantime, Lior asks, in addition to the situation column, is there anything to do with the option of bribing the Trump family by pumping the price of the Trump
yes, I
coin?
will talk about the bribing in just a sec.
So, uh, look, the starting place for that is what I said in the situation, which is this is clearly illegal. And people are doing it because they're resting on the assurance that Trump won't allow anybody to be prosecuted for giving him money. And the first thing to do is to make clear that that will not be the state of things forever. So that's where, I mean, there is some pretty clear law on this subject, and people should um, be making clear that when the winds change, nobody's going to get a pass because Trump liked being given money. I will let Nick continue and add his thoughts to this.
Basically, the entire cryptocurrency space, to begin with, was, as I said, this neglect by regulators. But Trump getting in is full on FML. That the cryptocurrency view from Trump is lol, crime is legal now. Um, Basically, any attempt to regulate the scams has gone out the window. Every cryptocurrency scammer, except maybe SPF, is looking at pardons, if not already pardoned. Um, Binance, a multi billion-dollar sanctions evasion engine and financial fraud engine, got literally let off the hook. Justin Sun of Tron literally bribed the president with 60 million or with like $30 million or something of Trump coin purchases and literally got off as a result. It's the Trump administration is blatantly corrupt, but the blatant corruption in the cryptocurrency space is stunning even by Trump standards. It literally is. You want to bribe the president? You buy his coin. It pumps up the price. There's a trucking business that has literally said in their SEC filings, we're going to spend up to $20 million buying Trump coin in order to influence the president.
Right. And by the way, I just I cited that as an example in the column. That is a flat violation of the um, of the gratuities statute. And this is a great example of exactly the point that I was making in the column. That is illegal whether Trump is president or not. And they may think they have an enforcement uh, uh, non-enforcement guarantee, and I'm sure they do for the time being. But if I were Senator Cory Booker, I would make a floor speech about how the moment the regime changes, the statute of limitations may not have run, and we will come after you if you are engaged in rampant corruption. The moment Congress, any committee of Congress, falls into any committee with jurisdiction falls into Democratic hands. We will investigate the crap out of this. And so right now it is a very low friction environment for this sort of gratuity, but that could change quickly. And people who were contemplating engaging in this sort of corruption, and leave aside prosecuting Trump, that's complicated. Prosecuting somebody who says, I am buying a certain amount of stable coin or Trump coin in order to put money in the president's pocket so that he will give me an exemption from, Mexico tariffs, which is, all but openly said in these SEC filings. You shouldn't be doing that without some expectation that you have risks of criminal prosecution.
Except that they don't, because Trump's pardon power. That you can bet the instant that word starts getting out, Trump will preemptively pardon everybody.
Okay. There are state statutes in what, well, that's a New Mexico based company, right?
Yes, but the
Okay,
states aren't doing it, and
but
they won't.
that's my
Um,
point. That if you want to prevent this, the entities with jurisdiction have to make clear that they will.
yes, and the problem is they not only aren't, but the entire cryptocurrency space is the story, both both now and before, of refusal to enforce black letter law.
Yes.
That Tether was a $2 billion black letter illegal scheme back in 2018, and it's now a $200 billion.
And where is
That
it based?
oh
Who
God,
is
it's
Tether?
it's I forget. It's all shadowy stuff, although some of the big backers behind it are now being feted at the White House. Um, but it's because it's been accepted as a dollar substitute within these environments, it has become a multi-billion-dollar vehicle for sanctions evasion. There was reporting in the Wall Street Journal of
Yep.
Hamas getting $1 billion in Tether. And Tether's excuse is just, oh, they aren't Tether customers. The only Tether customers are those who buy or redeem Tether. The actual users of Tether are not our customers. But we will be good and shut down any Tether wallet that we see that we're told is being used by bad people. Never mind that bad people can create 1 billion Tether wallets, because creating a Tether wallet is just a bit of math on their computer. Um,
All right. So let me ask are there any responsible actors in this space?
no. Um,
The
the
whole the whole space is nothing but corruption.
Yes, even Coinbase, the supposedly gold paradigm of cryptocurrency exchanges, has been corrupt from the beginning. So during the beginning of Coinbase, they tried to stay with things that would not trigger the Howey test. And even during that time, when they only had like half a dozen coins, they had hired the guy who had created Litecoin, and he did insider trading and market manipulation on the platform, and they never noticed until the SEC came knocking. Um,
A
and
bird just
since
flew into my studio.
ah, hey Birdie.
Oh, and now it's gone. Fortunately.
Um, and then and now they basically have things that are just basically how we test unlicensed security, unregistered security. They're a securities exchange without doing any of the paperwork or protection. And this is the gold standard of cryptocurrency exchanges. Everybody else is orders of magnitude worse. And the entire space is um, basically fraud, but it's fraud that has a lot of money behind it. So the cryptocurrency exchanges make money whether the price is going up or down because they're charging fees. The cryptocurrency mining companies are turning e-waste and power into number wang. They're basically burning a measurable fraction of the world's power to run a system that can do 6 transactions a second. But even then, they work by looting the locals. So, why is Texas the big spot for Bitcoin mining these days?
I don't know. I thought China was the center of
No,
Bitcoin mining.
China killed the Bitcoin mining years ago because they go, this is a waste of electricity. China subsidizes their electricity, they makes it nice and cheap for industrial purposes, and basically they kicked out the Bitcoin miners. The big ones are actually in Texas right now. And the reason why is they have these sweetheart deals with the power grid where they, first of all, Bitcoin miners are in many ways the worst for the power grid because they just want
Right.
load
Constant.
24/7, 365.
Right.
But they get discounted rates, hugely discounted rates on flat rate, not time of use electricity because they promise to turn off when the grid's in trouble. And so Bitcoin miners will make more money not mining Bitcoin for a few hours in terms of credits for turning off their power than they will make for Bitcoin mining for days and days. And this is literally looting the locals.
Okay. Let's talk. Uh, we've done 20 minutes on cryptocurrencies. We're going to do, it's 3 scams today, Nick. We're going to do 20 minutes on Bitcoin, which we've already done. Now we're going to shift to the supply chain. And then we're going to do 20 minutes on the supply chain. And then we're going to do the last scam, 20 minutes on higher ed. So, why, first of all, tell us how you became something of an amateur expert on the supply chain.
Because I've done my own circuit board designs. And when you do your own circuit board designs, even if you are doing at prototype quantities, you end up having to be aware enough of the electronic supply chain in terms of availability that there are some components on your circuit board design which are generic. You can get from a half a dozen plus vendors. Other things are very vendor specific. There's one vendor on the planet that makes the exact part you want. And if you can get the part, great. If you can't get the part, nope. And redesigning around the part is expensive because you basically have to throw out large sections of your design. And the big ones were microcontrollers and buck converters during COVID. So ST Microsystems makes some of the most popular microcontrollers. TI makes some of the most popular buck converters, which are these little things that efficiently convert voltage. And that was why the electronic supply chain was so disrupted during COVID, was you had these little things that have year-long lead time in large quantity. So what happened is you had year-long lead time. The car makers and some other vendors at the start of COVID said, oh, nope. The manufacturer stopped, and restarting takes time. And so that gave me a appreciation for lead times. The other thing is my girlfriend works in the wine industry. They have to do bottling. And the thing is bottling wine is actually a really good example of a just-in-time supply chain. So you have your bottling scheduled. The day before you bottle, the glass shows up, the corks show up, the capsules, the little foil
And
things on top
corks
show
are
up.
only from Portugal. You can't, they don't
Pretty
exist
much.
anywhere else, right?
Pretty much. And then you bottle your wine and put it in the warehouse. And the thing is with just-in-time supply chains, just-in-time supply chain does not mean I call it up and get it tomorrow. It's that I can call it up for delivery 6 months from now or 3 months from now. And the world has grown up around just-in-time supply chains. And if any dependency in your supply chain has a hiccup, you're out of luck, because you don't have the inventory. And so what has happened is you have decision cycles as a business measured in 6 months. You're planning 6 months out what you're bottling. Every business on the planet is planning 6 months out. And so like a business could handle 100% Chinese tariffs if they know they are going to ramp up on a predictable schedule and be this 6 months out. But when you have tariffs that are imposed on shipments in progress, shipments that you arrange 6 months from now, there's nothing you can do. Your decision cycle, that is how quickly you can decide on what to do, is slower than events unfolding. And the only thing you can do is basically give up. And so what has happened since Liberation Day is there's a huge amount of orders from China that were just literally canceled. And the supply ships were all in progress because it's a month and a half to cross the Pacific and unload things. And so decisions that were made a month ago don't show up until 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because there have been lots of discussions about how, the cargo ships LA port is empty and there are no cargo ships coming in, and by the way, a whole bunch turned around and all of that. I can't tell how much of this is impending doom that is overstated for purposes of, you know, frankly, people like us rubbing our hands with glee at the idea that the Trump economy is going to collapse and finally people will get it, as with the supply chain here being some stand-in for Bob Mueller, right? Or the we always have something that we think is finally going to end the delusional thinking, and it's always kind of 3 weeks, 3 months from now, and how much of this is real. Um, I heard Jerome Powell yesterday saying there are all these forecasts and everybody's, downgrading forecasts about the US economy. The one thing I don't see is actual damage in the US economy. The job market looks pretty good. Um, and so my question, you're not an economist, but why why should we be confident that the supply chain problems that we anticipate from like they're not showing up yet? What do you
Because
make of
we've
that?
experienced this. So we experienced this back in 2000. That back in 2000, you had trade glitch, that we had glitches occur in the supply chain, and this was hugely disruptive. That
Back in 2000, help
or
me
sorry,
out.
2010 or
Oh,
2020,
okay.
2020, sorry.
So we mean
COVID.
now COVID.
Yes. So
Okay.
COVID had empty store shelves because of this very phenomenon. That what would
I mean,
happen,
not empty. You had to throw a few punches to get a toilet roll of toilet paper, but come on, they weren't empty.
yeah, but the thing is this is a disaster that you can see unrolling, that you see the drop in shipments. you see the drop in decision cycles. That this is about the time of year that retailers are planning for Christmas. Um, you do not order your Christmas dolls for delivery on Thanksgiving at um, in at Halloween. You order them now. And the problem is when you have uncertainty and events unfolding at a decision cycle vastly faster than you can operate, the only thing you can do is basically give up. Um, and we know the disaster is coming because Trump is going on and denying that it's going to be a problem already. That
No,
you're
that only proves that Trump believes the disaster is coming.
uh,
We
Trump.
know he believes lots of things that aren't true.
Yeah, but this is defensive. That's the thing. That how many times can you think of that Trump believes something is personally bad for Trump and he has to get out ahead of it?
Admittedly, not that often, but I don't trust Trump about anything. I'm not going to trust him about this. It seems to me the better argument that you're making is the experiential one.
Yeah,
Supply chains are fragile. They're immensely flexible, but not in short term.
yeah.
And oh, by the way, all supply chains except the ones that are self-consciously designed not to involve China.
So, like, let's take for example wine. Um, there's there's basically orders from Europe for containers of wine are collapsing because they don't know what the retaliatory tariffs are going to be. Orders from the US in the wine industry newsletters, they are specifically, people are deliberately not purchasing European wine for delivery 6 months out because they don't know what the tariffs will be. If you look at,
Must be
so
good for California wine, though.
no, it's not,
Why
because
not?
with California wine, a lot of it's bottled in Chinese glass. And so if you scheduled your bottling 3 months from now with Chinese glass, you're canceling your bottling. If you ordered with US or Mexican glass, you may be okay. But which glass did you order? Um, and
So what if you
so,
make drones?
oh
For
God.
example, you make drones. Uh,
I have
um,
deliberately decided to forego some projects because of tariffs. I
so
wanted,
walk us through this. So for those of you who don't know, which I suspect is all of you, in his among Nick's many projects, he is designs drones designed to make war on other drones. Is that fair?
yeah, I want to. I've been looking for funding. I've given up, but I still have interests in that space. And so,
Anti-drone drones.
yes.
All right,
Although I
so
will settle for anti-orc drones.
anti-orc drones. Okay, so let's imagine you hadn't given up on this and you were still in the building drones business.
So
Uh,
this is a specific project I want to do. I want to do a small board like this that would act as both radio link and drone ID. So this would allow you to do small drones, fully US compliant and DoD compliant, and able to interact with this huge existing ecology of remotes, um, and do it cheaply. So I could order from a Chinese vendor for circuit boards and assemble them in house. Order from a Chinese vendor, have them assemble, get them to me, and then transition to US production. because U.S. production is vastly more expensive. This
And
isn't
is it more expensive even with 145% tariffs, or not?
unknown because the problem is A, this is doing it on the cheap, and B, doing it on prototype scale and deliberately trading off an extra few days of prototype time for vastly lower costs, something in the $300-$400 range. So a $400 order from China for prototype parts will not happen because it's not just a $100 tariff or 100% tariff, it's a de minimis $100 tariff. So I can't even do a run of $150 bare circuit boards from China, and then assemble it myself in house. And then the question is, okay, the CPU I want to use. The CPU I'd want to use is from a Chinese company. I can get that today from DigiKey out of their internal inventory,
But you
but
don't know when they're going to run out.
I don't know when they're going to run out. I don't know when or if they will reorder. Um, but the Chinese CPU has things that the ST Microsystem CPU just does not have capability wise. So it would be built something around a irreplaceable part where I don't know if it would be available 6 months or a year from now.
So let's bring this down to brass tacks because we're running out of time on this second scam segment. Um, how what are you expecting to see and when? How big is you're anticipating some kind of economic mega disaster. Um, what's the scale and when's it going to happen?
It's going to start showing up over the next couple of weeks because that's the latency of the supply chains. The the time it takes for a container to get from the China to the US through the ports to the recipient who then does something with it. Anything electronic is going to be FUBAR'd, anything with a circuit board. So for example,
And is it going to show up in terms of higher prices, in terms of non-availability, in terms
both.
of
So we're already starting to see higher prices. Small suppliers are raising prices. Availability is going to be an issue. But before you have availability, you're going to have a fair bit of price increase. So I bought myself a nice shiny new desktop computer for processing uh, a couple weeks ago because I know that 3 months from now they might not have the cases. So this is a computer assembled in the U.S., but Lord knows what the random parts from China are, and how quickly those can be substituted. Um, Anything electronic is going to be hard. Anything direct from China is, of course. Um, Christmas has been canceled, and they don't care about dolls. Perhaps we should call them action figures. Um, the But my metric is any consumable with more than 10 plus ingredients is something that I worry about. So I went to
what
Costco and
counts as
stocked
a consumable, meaning food?
not food. Our food supply chain is pretty domestic. Um, and the ingredients list is mostly domestic and not all that complicated. Although there might be issues with packaging. Um, but things like shampoo. So I look at my bottle of shampoo. I go, well, there's the plastic. 1/3 of that's at least from China. There's the pumpy bottle on the top. There's that ingredients list that's really long. So I made sure to stop at Costco and make sure I had a few bottles of my favorite shampoo and a 6 pack of shaving cream. Um, and the other thing is Costco will be the last to notice.
Right,
Um,
um, because they have depth.
yeah, they have depth of inventory that if you look at a Target or a Walmart, there's no warehouse space. They are truly just in time business. Costco, their warehouse space doesn't cost them anything because it's the upper shelves. So when you see Target start to have empty shelves of the stuff you want, go to Costco. You'll
All right,
have a
so
you'll have a week.
what do you think is the most sensitive stuff to this? Is it electronics? I mean, if I were, say, going to uh, go down the street to a Target or go on Amazon and note prices now,
Yeah.
and create a kind of a composite index of 100 goods that we're going to see this sensitivity in. What do you think is, consumer good number one that is going to have shortages issues?
I think it's basically anything with the circuit board. Anything with the circuit board, anything direct from China. Um, and and so a lot of random stuff. Halloween's going to be pretty dismal if you want Halloween decorations this year. Those orders have already been canceled.
Well, I gotta say, as somebody who really hates Halloween decorations outside and the way Halloween has turned into the new Christmas, I'm for that. Sign me up, make America great again, make Halloween de minimis again. And, I hate that shit. All right.
Although Christmas too. So the Onion headline that will be not the Onion. Trump declares successful victory in war on Christmas.
All right. End of segment 2. Let's talk higher ed. Nick, why do you hate higher ed? Why are you against American universities?
I'm not. They were my job and will be until the end of June as I'm formally laid off from Davis because they don't want to pay for teaching. So universities in the US have long had a problem that education is in some ways kind of secondary and have been heavily dependent on state and federal funding. Um, and so like the UC system and CSU system are being radically cut. Um, and thank you, Gavin. Thank you, never to be president, Gavin.
CSU is California State
State
University for
University.
those who, the
Um,
second biggest system in California.
and to give you an idea how bad they are, the number one thing you never cut in academics is the athletic department, and Cal State Sonoma is completely eliminating their athletic department because it saves several $1,000,000. Um, Davis, my students at Davis, each one spends $1,000 a year for the athletic department at Davis. We are such a football powerhouse, aren't we? Um,
So, how
um,
much of this is a Trump thing, i.e., kill the National Institutes of Health, kill the National Science Foundation, kill all these grant making organizations in the federal government, dry up the federal funds and create a crisis in higher ed, and how much of it is a underlying more structural problem?
so there's underlying structural problems, but those have been attacked with a sledgehammer by the Trump administration. And there's actually multiple fronts. The first front is the overhead, and I'll get to the explanation of that in a second, as well as just the gutting the funding overall for grants. The next is worrying about Doge screwing up the student loan system. But the final one is foreign students. that the US runs a massive trade surplus in services. And one of our biggest services is foreign education, that we get students from around the world. We have them
No, 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 no,
spend.
no. We don't have trade surpluses. Those foreign students are coming here and exploiting us.
Then how come we get the money?
No,
That
you can't say it that way, Nick. When we sell when a country sells us things, they're exploiting us. And when we sell them things, they're
they're
exploiting
exploiting us.
us. You got
Okay,
to get your
sorry.
vocabulary right.
Okay, but so these foreign students come into the US, they spend a fortune because they all pay out of state tuition. They don't get any financial aid. So, like a domestic student at the UC system a California student spends $15,000 a year on tuition, which should actually be enough to cover the actual expense of teaching, but hey, you got a football team. Um, the foreign students are spending 50,000 a year plus all the money they're spending on cost of living. And then the best of them we try to pirate away and keep, and brain drain the rest of the world. That's going to dry up immensely, because ICE is so hostile that Europe is seeing the stories of backpackers being thrown in jail, strip searched, and deported because they're on a round the world trip and the blonde German tourists came from east flying into Hawaii, or the Australian took a cheaper flight through Singapore rather than a direct flight.
Yeah, just to foot stomp this point, there it does seem to be a bit of a university focus to this. I had dinner the other night with two friends. By coincidence, it was near American University. ICE raided the restaurant the next day. It had nothing to do with our being there, of course, but um, there does seem to be a fair bit of ICE enforcement in areas around universities.
We have Harvard Harvard postdoc researchers thrown in jail for 2 months and being threatened to be deported back to Russia because of undeclared frog embryos.
You know,
That's a ticket.
yeah, undeclared frog embryos, that's a real smuggling problem, Nick. And, I know you're soft on this frog embryo smuggling industry, but, come on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unless they pay for the frog embryos in Bitcoin, in which case they get a pass.
Yeah. But the result is going to be starting in the fall, the admissions of foreign students is going to be way down, because if you're a foreign student, do you take that risk? I have foreign students, and don't forget the random cancel of thousands of student visas saying you have to deport yourself now for things like, oh, you got a parking ticket or a speeding ticket. It's arbitrary, capricious lunacy, and the result is students who have a choice are going to choose elsewhere. So, for example, University of British Columbia in April reopened graduate admissions for the fall for anybody who's currently in the U.S. That the canceling of student visas wholesale was hugely disruptive. And it doesn't matter that they've walked back 2/3 of it when fought in court. Students who are coming are going to go, I'm going to come elsewhere. I've had foreign students going, should I return home for summer vacation? And my response is no. You don't want to risk the airport border. I'm a white dude. Me going through the border, I've got some international travel planned. I'm mildly worried and going to have on piece of paper some Fourth Amendment lawyers because I know they'd love a clean border search exception thing, and I might have to leave my electronics behind. Um, but for a foreign student, it's just nuts. And so we have all the students who are here already, but future students are going to choose elsewhere. Already, Canada is ramping up the foreign student attractiveness because it's a hugely profitable business. Um, Faculty who can leave the U.S. are going to, and that alone is going to be a huge problem. But then there's the attack on grants and overhead. That a lot of university funding is research grants. The government pays us to do research, and we do research. And that's been drastically cut. But also, there's this move to cut what's known as overhead. So when I write my grant in the US, I basically have this line item of overhead. This is 50% additional that goes to the university to pay for things like lights, building, janitorial service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is incredibly audited. So back in the 90s, Stanford ruined it for everybody else by charging their yacht to overhead. And as a consequence, overhead rates are now incredibly audited and negotiated. So a university doesn't really make money on overhead. The goal is not to lose money on overhead. And as a researcher, we hate overhead because it feels like it's not going to our research. But at the same time, you eliminate the overhead, you cap it at 15%, and we don't actually end up having any resources. And this again is a decision cycle thing, that a lot of stuff in the US that's charged to overhead, in Europe, they don't have nearly the overhead, but it gets direct charged. And so in the US, we could, if the government said 2 years from now, overhead rates will be capped at 15%, we could handle it. Basically, what would happen is we'd be charged for lights, we'd be charged for our office, we'd be charged for the mice, to charge them for the mice, extra for the lights, 2% for looking in the mirror twice, and it would all be direct charge instead, and we wouldn't actually see any more money for grad student salaries or anything else. But because we don't have time to adapt, it's just literally going to be universities are going to say, if you can't get the full overhead, we won't do the grants at all because we'd lose a huge amount of money on each grant.
Right, because universities have immense sunk cost in physical plant
Yeah,
and all of these ancillary services they provide to their employees and students.
yeah. And a lot of it, and the stuff that's kind of garbage, like the gym, is not charged to overhead because of the Stanford yacht issue. Overhead literally does pay for the buildings. It pays for the lights. It pays for the maintenance. It pays for the janitorial service. It pays for the grant admin staff that handle all the really annoying paperwork. That grant admin staff, that alone is worth thousands of dollars on the grant because they're spending hours and hours and hours of their time handling the annoying paperwork that's involved in making sure that the money is spent properly.
All right, so we got 6 minutes, and I want to ask the so what question. Um, in the end, the federal government, leave aside the crisis that this is going to produce in universities, the net quantity of research is going to go significantly down. And the result of that is either that some of that research migrates to the private sector, that some of the research is done by the government itself, which, if you fire all of NIH, is not really going to happen. Or it's simply not going to happen at all, or it's going to migrate to, I mean, there are places it can and can't migrate to. Um, who is in a good position? Where is this stuff going to go? Is it going to disappear? Is it going to go to Canada? Is it going to go to Lockheed Martin and Johnson and Johnson? Where, or is it going to go to China and Singapore? Where is the research address that is well positioned to pick this stuff up, or is it just going to disappear entirely?
A lot is just going to disappear entirely. That private sector funding, basically, the private sector free rides off the US government funding. That, like, if you look at all the drugs approved over the past decade, only one did not receive significant government funding during its development. Um, Foreign governments have opportunities to cherry pick targeted industries. So, say if South Korea wants to specialize in computer security, call me. Um, but overall, there's just not going to be a large substitution. And so, what the brain drain is going to happen in the short term is you have research that just doesn't happen. And it's remarkable what short term we're not going to see a thing apart from a lot of researchers in bad shape. Long term, we don't know what we're going to be missing. So, one example is, what has NSF research done for me apart from pay for my job? It allowed us to wipe out $1 billion a year Russian criminal enterprise. $100 million a year criminal enterprise doing billions of dollars of damage to the economy a year no longer exists thanks to the NSF research. And stuff like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and unlike the supply chain, um, this stuff does not become visible, right?
No.
Because it's good things that don't happen rather than bad things that do happen, or bad things that do happen that might have been prevented in a different timeline. What's
And
the
the good takes 20 years. So Quinta reminded me of a essay I wrote in Lawfare in 2000, arguing that foreign students, and again, this was deliberate Trump things, on a 20-year timeline are a national security issue. But on a 2-year timeline, we won't notice.
right? So what is the mechanism of political feedback for this? It's not angry voters when the Costco shelves are empty. What's the it's not academics and researchers giving political donations to Democrats, because to the extent they uh, give political donations at all, they already do. That's what they're already doing. And by the way, they're not a big donor base anyway. So what's the political feedback mechanism here?
That's the problem. They're really, on the research side, there isn't much because it's a long-term thing. That long-term planning is what a government should be good at, but there's no good mechanism for punishing malplanning in a political system because this is obscure and technocratic. The education itself, that your angry parents, um, that, but even then we have trouble explaining to their parents that the reason why, say, electives are being cut is this fundamental economic problem and Gavin Newsom's an idiot. It's Fortunately for the rest of us, Gavin Newsom is an idiot is now quite plain for other things.
We are going to leave it there. And I just want the record to note that as a non California voter, I expressed no opinion about the governor of California. Um, uh, Look, we're going to be back tomorrow. And if you are a Californian who wants to get up at 5 in the morning and have interesting things to say, hit me up the way Nick did. I don't invite Californians on the show because it seems rude to ask somebody to get up at that hour. That said, if you are the sort of person who works on East Coast time anyway, let me know because this was a delightful conversation. Nick Weaver, you're a great American, Lego problem or not. May all your supply chains be better than you expect them to be.
May all
Um,
my supply chains run on time.
yes, and may all your circuit boards arrive. Um, Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. Got no idea who the guest is going to be. Got no idea who the co hosts are going to be. But I'll be there. And I suspect so will you.